All right.
Recovery is a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. And I love to celebrate everybody's pathway to recovery. And today I have my friend Dan here, who is my favorite influencer on TikTok this season. I found him doing some recovery comedy, which is always amazing because who doesn't need to laugh when we are in the season that we're in the world mid apocalypse? Say hello to everyone, Dan.
Hey, everybody. My name's Dan. I'm an addict in recovery. Um, I make recovery humor, like Jamie says. I'm just actually today, I'm 90 days clean. I'm 90 days back in my journey. And yeah, absolutely. So, do you want me to just keep going? Do you want me to go with my story? What do you
Yeah,
want?
let's talk a little bit about how your addiction kind of began.
Okay. So mine started pretty young, So I started when I was 12. Um, what it was for me, it was hey Crystal. And what it was for me, it was I I always kind of felt like out of place in the world. I always felt like I didn't quite fit in because there was some trauma going on at home. You know, my father was an alcoholic, he was abusive. So like when I go to school, I just kind of felt always out of place. I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. And that's why therefore I didn't, I was very socially awkward. I didn't have a lot of friends in school. So the couple friends I did have, they started smoking. They started smoking and stuff. And I was always going to be the kid that I didn't want to do that. Life. I always said from a young age, I'm never going to drink. I'm never going to, do drugs. And, but I eventually gave in because my friends were doing it. I was like, I had no self-worth, none at all, and I didn't want to lose the couple friends I had. And then when I started, I started with smoking weed, and I just, it gave me a sense of belonging. I didn't have that euphoric, like, oh my Lord, this is the greatest thing I ever found. It really wasn't that like that for me. It was more of, I felt like I was a part of somebody, a part of something. And I was also felt like I felt like how everybody else looked, in my opinion. I felt confident. I felt like I could talk to people. I felt, accepted. I just felt like what I thought everybody looked like. And, that's how it started for me. And then eventually, it snowballed. I said I would try anything once. And unfortunately, I never tried nothing just once. It was one thing after another. Yeah. And that's how it started, the high school years. I went through high school until, I dropped out the end of my junior year, started getting in trouble with the law, started going to jail. 18 years old, I got my first felony. A couple years later, I got my second. It was a major one, and I went to prison for it. Did 2 years in prison. And then my addiction after I got out of prison really took off because that's when I moved to Florida shortly after that. I met my son's mother in 2012, and we moved to Florida, and that's when my addiction just absolutely skyrocketed. Took it to another level. That's when. Do we have to use code words on here?
Not really.
Not really. No, okay. Because I know on TikTok we got to use code words. So yeah. So like yeah, my it just snowballed in Florida. That's when I found methamphetamines, and I just from there, being a person that's ADHD, that was like the worst thing I could have found, and that became my whole addiction. And yeah, absolutely.
So when you did it, did you do it in all the ways?
Yes. So yeah, let me make it clear. I am a bottom gutter. I'm a junkie at the heart. So I did it in every way. So I shot, snort, every single way. I am gutter. I was at the bottom of the barrel for sure. Absolutely.
And so when you started doing that, can I ask you, did you notice anything start to happen when you started to use methamphetamines on a regular basis?
So like talking about the effects.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, of course. So throughout my time, it changed. In the beginning, it was one thing, and it just slowly started progressing into more of like, man, I would experience a whole bunch of things, just like everybody else, but staying up for days. It really took a toll on my mental health. Like because we all go through that stuff when we're on ice, that we think all this stuff's happening, or all this, we think people are after us, the paranoia, and it's so real that and then going into psychosis. Once I started going into psychosis, that's when it really changed for me. And it was hard for me up until really recently, up until this time in recovery. Even in times when I wasn't using, I was still thinking like people were following me. I was still thinking like stuff like that was happening. And I attribute, I say my belief in God comes from the fact that I've seen the devil while under the influence of methamphetamines. I have felt and seen like this like, you just feel when you're doing that substance, it feels like you're just a part of something that's purely evil. And like evil, like and it just so happens evil things happen around you, and it's just literally the devil's drug, like they say.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So how did you get free from it?
So it was July 4th of this year. It was just, I was in another position, same spot, starting over, strung out again. And I had, this is the position I have been in my entire life. Just this position of being at the bottom, not having nothing, you know, just having no life and having to constantly start over. And I remember sitting right out here in my sister out in the pavilion out here. My sister was sitting out there, and I remember just feeling like so angry, like just angry, like with myself, with like just the whole situation. Like everything everybody was saying about me, I was proving them right through my actions. I was a loser, and I was tired of it. Like I just felt like a loser, and I was tired of being at the bottom. And I remember something snapped in me inside, where I was just like, enough. And I was like, you know what, God, like, I'm just going to go. And like, I mean, if you're there, like, just lead me, but I'm not looking back this time. I'm going, and I'm going for all my dreams. I'm going for everything that I want. I'm getting rid of all the people in my life that are negative, that I don't need. And I'm just going to trust that this is like where I'm going to go. And like, I'm not looking back. Like, and I just started talking to myself differently about this. And I just started, and I believe 100% that like, because of like the actions I've been taking, God has removed like the obsession to use methamphetamine. So I don't even think about it no more. And I will say this. I'll say this. What's helped me in the beginning too, I had to look at this thing differently and meet myself where I was at. You know what I mean? And I've always struggled in early recovery with cravings. I have not ever made it over a year clean, except for one time since I was 12 years old. I'm 35 years old. I've had a year clean one time. And so I had to allow myself to meet myself where I was at. And I had a choice. I was either going to do MAT or Cali sober. And that was something I was always so like against before, because I was so indoctrinated by recovery circles that was bad. And if you do that, you're going to, you're going to die, you're not going to make it. But then at the same, but then I'd be on social media seeing success stories of people that are doing these things, but still working on themselves. And they a lot of them had this similar story. They started talking to themselves differently. They had to get that out of their head, that they were going to fall apart if they had to do a start, if they had to do another avenue to start, and it was okay. So I chose to do Cali sober, and it's been like overall the peace I feel from just allowing myself to be where I was at, forming this relationship with my higher power again, and then with the community I have of people, and it's just been the best 3 months of my life by far. And I haven't had one strong desire to use methamphetamine in the last 90 days. Since July 4th, something happened, and that is unexplainable to me in that pavilion. And when it's something unexplainable, it is God, and it's God alone. You know what I mean? And it's been happening ever since I started this whole content journey. All sorts of experiences I'm having with God and with people, and people finding my community when they're thinking about going to use, and they open their phone instead, and they go to call their dope boy, and they open TikTok, and my lives on their FYP. There's a lot of that happening, and it's just, you see God moving everywhere throughout your community, throughout all the community. There's so many different communities through Boston's community. We see God moving in different directions and moving us in different ways, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yes, that is definitely there's definitely a God movement happening in recovery for sure. Um, that's so interesting. So, okay. So when people find out that you are Cali sober,
Hmm.
what are some of the barriers that you come up against?
Okay. Now, are you saying within the social media circle, or just in the, like in
The
the world? And
recovery world as a whole.
okay, so I found, I don't go to many 12-step meetings anymore because of the fact that you can't really freely share about that without being looked at like, well, you're like you got the plague, like, it's like you're doing something, like it's almost like it's forbidden, and it feels like, and it's hard to feel like connected to a place where you can't share about that stuff without feeling that way. Now I know it's not every group, I know it's not every person, but at the same token, it's a lot of it, and it's hard to find consistent meetings where you can go to where you don't feel where you can share about that, and where people won't like come up to you and give you a bunch of shit after the meeting and tell you that you're gonna die or something crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I just, yeah.
So
So
it's like
that's what the biggest,
stigmatized.
stigmatized is the perfect word. Yes, absolutely, and it's stigmatized everywhere, even with the like the like no, not like the families of not my particular family, but the families of addicts. They've gotten in their head that, like, they can't do these things. It's stigmatized within the family. Like, addicts can't even go to their own family and say, hey, I'm on MAT, I'm doing this, without being looked at like they're doing, like they just want to be doing it to stay getting loaded. You know what I mean? That's another thing. You get automatically accused of that. You don't want to be sober, you don't want a better life, that you want to still get loaded. And it's like, no, this is a different time, day and age. And we were talking about this, Jamie, before we came on live. These aren't just like, we can't, it's not like back in the day where people were partying. These aren't substances anymore. These are poisons. And I'm not no doctor, but I could imagine with the power of these poisons that they make the cravings just that more amplified when you're trying to come off this stuff. And it does. The detoxes are harder for Fetty and for xylazine. These are not easy detoxes, and they're nasty. And it's almost, for an addict not to give into the cravings, it's really hard. So to have these things like Suboxone, methadone, those things are tools. And now, just like with meetings or anything, they got to be used properly or they're not going to work. I've had an experience where I was at the methadone clinic for a year. Best year of my life, probably in 2015. I went the whole year, did it how I was supposed to. But when it went wrong is when I went wrong. I started abusing the take homes. I started telling them to up my dose. I started doing all that. So that was on me. Just like with 12 steps, if I quit doing the steps, I quit going to meetings, I'm going to relapse, right? So it's just
Mhm.
about putting the work in. You can still put the work in when you're on those things.
Absolutely. And being that, especially Suboxone and methadone are prescribed medication, and a person's prescription should be between a person and their doctor,
Yep.
just like a mental health medication, right? Like
Yep.
nobody can tell you what you can and can't take. That's
Right.
between you and your doctor, right? And so and I used to be a hardcore 12 stepper,
Dude.
hardcore work the steps or die.
Me
You
too.
have to be abstinent. And it was actually through my kid's dad that I saw how amazing Suboxone really was. And
Yeah.
who better for me to talk shit about than my baby daddy, right? If I'm gonna talk shit
Yeah.
about anyone, it's gonna be my baby daddy, right?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
saw him go from shooting heroin to
Mm-hmm.
taking Suboxone to paying child support, to spending time with his kids, to getting an apartment, to working a full time job, to doing these things. And I was like, wait a minute, like,
Yeah.
this is amazing. This is
Yeah.
amazing. And what is it? Like, oh, you're saying that he's like people like have this idea that you get like addicted, right?
Mhm.
But like addiction is continued use despite negative consequences. That is addiction.
Right. Right.
Continued use despite negative consequences.
Right.
If you're taking a medication or Cali sober, and
Mm-hmm.
you're like elevating and
Yep.
winning,
Yep.
like what is the issue,
And
right?
Exactly. And that's what I've been stressing in our community is what we're fighting against too. It's like, I say it every live. It's like, I don't understand for the life of me when we got people dying in the fucking streets. We have people in rooms of recovery debating that these things are good or bad. And like the majority, and usually they have to say it's bad. And it's like, it's like, there's a lot of different types of things that are considered addicting, but they don't cause problems in our lives. That's why we don't necessarily stop them when we like, there's tobacco, there's coffee, and like there's stuff like, I know those things are a lot lesser than Suboxone and all that, but I'm just saying Suboxone and methadone and people that can handle the Cali sober thing. And that's another thing. You gotta be honest with yourself. You gotta be honest with where you're at. And if you try something and you keep failing at it, maybe it's time to, but I'm just saying. So those things, those medications are helping people, saving lives. So like, and they're in, instead of dying in the street or being in a trap house, with a needle in their arm, they're in a room of recovery, pouring coffee for somebody or opening and holding the door open, and trying their best. So like, why can't we just support that? Why can't we just accept that everybody is in a different spot in their journey and we can meet people where we're at instead of getting a stroke of our ego to go up to somebody and tell them that our recovery is superior to theirs? How about you put your ego in your back pocket and go help the person? Because we're getting away from that in the recovery community. And it's like, if we're the last line of defense for addicts, if the recovery community and rooms of recovery aren't safe places for even struggling addicts to go, then where are they going to fucking go? So, that it's like, we have to start to really look at the bigger picture, and we have a major problem in this country, and all we got is each other. Nobody else gives a shit. America, nobody cares about the addicts and what they got going on. Overall, they don't. I mean, it's just how it is. And you can tell because of the ignorance, there's nobody that even knows much about addiction. They still view it as a moral issue half the time. And it's just like mind-boggling when there's millions of people suffering right now in our streets. Go to any big city, go walk a block down the road. You can't walk without seeing addiction. It's everywhere. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, like, I mean, to be straight up, like I did, like I did methadone for a little while, like through the clinic. I did Suboxone like on my own to get off of pain pills at one time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even, I had a big issue. I had a surgery, like a major surgery where they gave me pain medication. Pain medication is my DOC. And I got squirrely on it, right? So I got squirrely on it, and I was like, you know what I'm going to do? And this was already in my plan because I had a wellness recovery action plan for my surgery. If I get squirrely on my pain pills, I'm going to switch over to Kratom.
Yeah.
And I did, right? And then I like detoxed off the Kratom. But you know what? I didn't buy any pain pills from Canada.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that's part of like, that's what I'm like considered like harm reduction, right? It's not like what they like that. And it's like, it's progress, and it needs to be viewed as that. And it's amazing what can happen when you start, if you stop telling yourself that you're going to fall apart, if you try to go from one thing to another to try to get better. Like, it's amazing what can happen. I'm telling, because I've experienced it. My whole life, I was indoctrinated by 12-step meetings to think that if I'm not abstinence, like complete abstinence, I have no chance at living any type of life, and I'm basically completely useless to the world. And like if I think that, then I'm going to act like that when I'm not completely abstinent, right? And that's what happened. I would destroy myself up here, and that's where this disease centers in, is in our mind. It centers in the mind. So the solution has to be, a lot of it's, there's spiritual solution, 100%. It has to, for me, in my opinion, a spiritual solution is the solution that gets us out, gets us free for real. But like the actions we take and for our mental is really important too, to get us through the day-to-day grind. No matter how much, no matter what your higher power is, he's not going to come down here and do it for you. You know what I mean? So there's stuff we got to do and be proactive. And I know for me, my God will make it. He'll bring it to light to me. He'll let me know what I need to work on, what I need to be doing. It's just about me being real with it. I got to be honest with myself and listen to it. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. Depends if I want to change it or not. There's some things.
Right.
I ain't ready to change yet. You know what I mean? So
Right. But if
it's
someone continues to sit there and like talk down to you and tell you like
yeah,
whatever, you're a
yeah,
bad person, you're a bad person, you're a bad person, you're a bad person. Guess what? One day you're going to wake up and be a bad person. You know what I mean? You
yeah,
like hear that stuff over and over. So we need to speak life to people. Like if we see people doing things, you know what I mean? Like there's a kava bar here in Athens. I like to go to the kava bar. You
yeah,
can call it whatever you want. I
yeah.
never sucked dick for kava. Okay. I mean, come on, right? Let's be real.
Yeah,
Okay. Like 100%, right? I
yep,
mean, there's a difference between addiction and like just like living life. You know what I'm
exactly.
saying?
100%. And we need to change the conversation. I believe it 100%. That's why I was so excited when you brought me on, and when you started talking about the topic, I'm like, oh girl, this is perfect, because this is like exactly what my community and what I'm about. So I'm so happy our communities can join up. And especially because I don't know what if I'm gonna have you. I'm definitely having you on my TikTok. So I don't know if we're still doing that tonight after we get done here, but if you can't, we're still yeah,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
yeah.
we're sure as long as my internet worked. You guys, we had so much warfare trying to get this thing to work. It was so
Oh
crazy.
yeah, the devil was working hard, guys, not to let us come on.
For
Real.
real, for real. Yes, but I mean, yes, Christine said addiction is bondage. Exactly. You don't have a choice when you're in addiction. That's the difference. So like it just baffles me when especially I'm especially disappointed in the Christian community.
Yeah.
Especially disappointed in the Christian community and their self-righteous like self-righteousness toward this
Yeah.
topic
Yeah.
um is just it just breaks my heart because Christians of all people, it's like this is why
Yeah.
I'd be like don't call yourself a Christian if you're going to say things like this.
And it's
But
ridiculous because look what Jesus. If you read, I really focus on I'm a Christian, and well, in I believe, and I just really try to focus on the Gospels and what Jesus did. And like, if you really look at his example and how he wanted us to treat others, he wanted us to love and accept people and meet them where they're at. That I believe in my heart that our whole purpose for being on this spinning rock is that God put us down here all with common problems. There's people with addiction, mental health. There's all sorts of common problems, and there's groups that I believe that God wanted. Those problems are here so we can all connect on a common problem, but and turn it into something beautiful. And that's what recovery is. It's that we all come together on a common problem, and we turn it into together through the strength of community and fellowship, and we were able to turn it into something beautiful. But the problem is that the devil's working at putting a fork in that communities, and he's trying to put a fork in the MAT. We have MAT and 12 steps are like they're miles apart. They really are. If we're being honest, they're not even like some areas they might be closer, maybe over in like the West Coast. They're more proactive out there. I'm not sure. I've never been out there, but I know when I was down in Florida, I mean, it's not most places. It's not. It's a huge divide right now, and we're in spiritual warfare. We were talking about it. If you
mhm.
and like there, if you believe in good, if you believe in God, then there's an evil, and I know there is, and you can see it happening with this. How it doesn't when things are unexplainable in a negative way. Like, why are we debating this stuff? Why aren't we just trying to accept people and love on people? Why are we hurting our own by saying that? Those are our own. They're all we got. Like, we're all they got, and we're gonna say some degrading stuff to them, or to run them out of the rooms, or make them feel not worthy or not valid because they're in a different part of their journey. It's just mind-boggling to me. So the devil's at work when it's like that.
And the most important thing is that you're doing the work on yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the first 6.5 years of my recovery, I didn't even take ibuprofen, right? Like, I was like hardcore. I worked the steps. I did NA steps. I did AA steps 4 times. I did Celebrate Recovery steps. I was in a 4.5 year discipleship. I did trauma therapy, grief therapy, all these things in the first six and a
Yep.
half years. You know what I mean? Guess
Yeah.
what happens? The brain heals.
It
The
does.
brain heals. It
Yep.
really does. The pathways, they start connecting, they start going different ways. Those holes that were in there are not there anymore. And people, it's in their own literature and they don't even believe it.
Nope.
Like
It's
It's so true. Like they're like, no, no, always once an addict, always an addict. No, not really.
no,
Not really. Your brain heals. Today, I'm like, it's not a good idea for me to stick a needle in my arm. Not
yeah,
a good idea.
yeah. It is, and regardless if you're an addict or not, it's never a good idea to go smoke crack. It's never a good idea to go shoot some meth. You know what I mean? It's never a good idea for anybody. So like, I agree with you 100%. We heal, and I just started 2 days. It was 2 days ago. I signed up for counseling and therapy, and so I can have a one-on-one. Because I like I said, I got tired of going to the doing the steps with sponsors. I've had crazy experiences with sponsors, like. So I decided not this time. I'm going to work with a counselor. I'm going to go through trauma, like the therapy stuff. And I started that process 2 days ago, and it's really exciting. So, yeah, it's all about it's all about personal development. I believe, it starts with the belief in God, though. Every morning I wake up and like I spend, no matter what I got going on, I spend 15 minutes to a half hour with God and in meditation. I believe it's absolutely vital for for my day to start it off like that, and I just, and every night I end it with God. And I also, every night I do I do adopt some things from the 12 steps. I do adopt, like take the meat, leave the bone. I do a nightly inventory, on the Everything AA app. And I just make sure, check myself. Do I owe anybody apology? Was I a shitbag today? Did I lie? Am I keeping something from somebody that I shouldn't? It's important. I believe those things are really important and for daily success.
100%. Absolutely. And the cool thing is like that there's so many different ways we can work this, because like I always say, everyone is unique. We all have unique DNA. We all have a unique fingerprint.
Yeah.
So what works for one person may not work for another. Some people might want to do their prayer in the afternoon, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like we don't have to shame people for it.
Exactly. And that's the beautiful thing. Like I'm hoping with our, like the community I have now, I'm trying to get other people to branch out and develop more meetings coming from mine. Cause we just need more communities of people that just accept everybody with what they're doing. It's okay. We can, when in my morning meeting, I like to sometimes have them read devotions. And I always say, or like a morning reading, I was like, bring your morning reading. I don't care. If you're a Christian, bring your Christian reading. If you're Jewish, if you're Muslim, whatever walk of life you come from, I want to hear what your morning routine is, because that's yours. And somebody else in this chat or in any chat might need to hear that, because they might be on that wavelength. There's people come from all walks of life, and there's a spot for everybody at the table for spiritual, religious beliefs, political beliefs, all that stuff. There's a spot for everybody. And it's just like trying to, we need to try to really work together to try to unite. We have to, or else we're going to get swallowed alive by this epidemic called addiction.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep. Absolutely.
So I guess we are going to jump off here so we can hopefully jump onto your TikTok.
Okay. So are you going to go live? Okay. So you go live and I'll go live, and I'll request you, and then we'll go from there. Okay.
Okay. All right. Cool.
All right, yo, everybody.
All right, bye, guys.
I'm going over to TikTok.